Play at Novibet.
Hello and a warm welcome to another edition of the Irish Angle on Jump To It, sponsored by Novibet. As usual, I've Emma Nagle and Johnny Ward with me, and of course I'm back after 3 weeks away on holiday. So guys, how have you been? All good?
All good, Vinny.
Yeah, all good. Glad to see you back.
Great stuff. Thanks very much. Yeah, glad to be back. Well, kind of glad to be back. Anyway, let's get stuck in. Lots of things. The big ones from the weekend, particularly, is Frankie Dettori. Last rides in England after the big day, Champions Day, and he had two winners, King of Steel, particularly in the big race. What do you make of that, Emma? He'll be missed.
He will. I think kind of everyone's been saying that they're getting a little bit sick of him, but I was actually I was in Ascot on Saturday, and he did add an awful lot to the day. In fairness, the whole crowd was really getting behind him, and kind of I hadn't really seen him probably fully in action live before, and he was brilliant. Now, in fairness, playing up to the crowd, and everyone kind of enjoyed it. There was chants of Frankie Dettori when he was coming back in on King of Steel, and he's riding like I thought the ride on Trawlerman in the first, it's probably as good as you'll see. Really, I think you don't see Ryan Moore getting caught out too often, but I think Frankie got the best of him that day, and he's still riding probably as well as he ever has. So it was a very enjoyable day now, I think.
Yeah, it was a long farewell all the same. What do you think, Johnny? He will be missed in a big way, will he?
Yeah, whenever he retires, Well,
that's the other side of it, yeah.
I was just saying to the lads in the press room, we were speaking just off air, Vinny, about the loss of Cliff Noon, and you'd miss the days of all the banter in the press room, but we were just saying in the press room that if Ryan Moore retires, it'll be kind of a bit like Ruby Walsh at Punchestown, albeit probably even less kind of drawn out. It'll be just like, right lads, I'm off. Whereas Frankie, this could go on for another year or two the way it's going, and in fairness to Frankie, the irony of it is he is riding exceptionally well, and I do wonder how much retirement would suit him, and I thought Peter Thomas had a brilliant article on him in the Racing Post about the complexities of the man. He's not straightforward at all, but he's done amazing work for racing, and I honestly do think this racing probably needs good publicity at the moment, and Frankie has done that, and his rides, as Emma says, on Trawler, man, it was such a good ride, and the whole King of Steel, sort of the way that ride panned out, for a guy of his age, he's really truly inspirational as well. He's been in Britain now for 35 years, give or take. Came over as a young kid, sent over by his dad. His dad and mother would have had a difficult relationship, and I think Frankie had quite a domineering dad as well. And his father was such a good rider in Italy, and it could have made him or broke him. But he has become a phenomenon, and when he is gone, we won't have a rider to replace him that is in some respects the face of racing at a time when British racing really needs it. And I think the two things about Saturday were just how bad the ground was in terms of kind of punters getting involved at all, and some of the flops that some of the performances were really, really poor. But Frankie, as long as he's riding like this, I can see why he's keeping going, but I am a bit kind of worn out by the whole retirement thing. The Racing Post on Saturday saying his last visit to Ascot or whatever, I think he's like 1 to 10 with one bookmaker to be back there next year.
Yeah, I think it's a certainty to be back somewhere next year. We'll definitely see him popping over from California, you'd imagine. I'd like to think he'd be in Bellewstown as well for the Barney Curley Day that he's involved in there. Emma, what about him long term? Let's say he rides for another year, 2 years, but he's someone the industry needs, isn't he? In it in some capacity. I don't know where you fit him in. Is it just as a TV pundit maybe in the future or what? But it'd be nice to see him around, wouldn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I think just the way the kind of crowd reacts to him, and kind of like Johnny said there, when he actually does fully retire, I suppose, it's kind of very hard to see anyone who can kind of pick up that mantle of, being the kind of big, massive personality. I know there's some great guys coming up who are, very nice people and all this, but, I don't think anyone can play up a crowd like Frankie Dettori can, and kind of, I'm not sure what the official attendance was now at Ascot on Saturday, but I'd say it was probably as good as they've got for Champions Day in a long, long time. There was very little room to move around there, and I think that was probably down to Frankie, because when you were kind of lining up outside the parade ring for a horse to come back in, when it was Frankie after winning, there was a lot bigger crowd than the rest of the races. So Yeah, I mean, what he's going to do, like once he actually does come back from America, I suppose, if he does come back to England, like you'd love to see him on the television, being in and around the crowds and just being involved some way, because he's probably one of the best things that's happened to racing in a long, long time. And like Johnny said, like him just bringing the kind of positive spotlight onto it, even just for the one day that was in it, was massive. I mean, I probably could see him being a pundit on TV. He'd be quite entertaining anyway. Maybe him and Chapman going head to head every now and again.
Yeah, could be. Just looking back at that Champions Day as well at the weekend, one for me was Paddington, Johnny. What was the logic in running him after he'd got beaten the previous day? Like he'd won his first six starts of the season, 4 Group 1s, including a classic. He'd won over from 8 furlongs to 10 furlongs. So he was versatile somewhat in terms of trip. He'd also won on everything from good ground to heavy ground. So like, is there any point in keep running him?
Yeah, well, I think Aidan's thing now, and he said this year, he's been he's been fairly loquacious this year by his standards, speaking about these horses. And obviously the last day he said he stretched the elastic too far, but his thing is that we run these horses to test them out as stallion prospects with a view to their sort of durability and how tough they are. On that ground, actually, I in hindsight, and obviously it got worse as the week went on, I'm not sure was there a great deal to be gained by him running the race at all. Even if he won the race, he's kind of, he'll go down as a bit of a mudlover in some respects, which I think the winner will. I mean, Big Rock winning. I think Big Rock produced the best performance ever by his son of Rock at Gibraltar, and this is after the Rock died as a 23-year-old, which is quite mad. But that was all down to the ground, and for me, it was a fairly insane race. Like, it was fairly strong fractions up front, and horses that were travelling well in behind just started to basically, just started to completely be unable to quicken, I suppose. And Paddington was very fresh, but I basically think he wasn't able to keep to the schedule that Aidan demanded of him. And he now they're on about maybe he'll have one more run, and that'll be fascinating if he does have one more run, because it'll be Aidan will be really kind of putting all his poker chips on that in terms of getting him back, because this is one bad run followed by a very bad run for a horse that looked like a really good stallion prospect, and he did damage his stallion prospects over the last couple of runs. There's no doubt about that. Yeah,
I would have felt that too. I see Aidan this morning is talking about Continuous, which was 5th in the Arc, goes for the Japan Cup. 26th of November is the date for that, and Augustus Road and heading to the Breeders' Cup Turf on the 4th of November. What about Continuous? That could have a chance. Emma, could it in the Japan Cup? I don't know much about the opposition. We're always being told these Japanese horses are fantastic and everything else. I know Ryan Moore won the race last year on a Japanese horse, but Continuous would be one of the better ones we have over here.
Yeah, I wouldn't be any kind of expert on Japanese form or anything, but I think he's going to meet Equinox, just from what I've read, who's kind of the superstar in Japan. But yeah, no, I think he should have a chance if he goes over. I think I was reading this morning just kind of quotes from Aidan and Ryan about him heading over, and I kind of agree with them that maybe he's one in the Arc might be a bit underrated in a way. I think he kind of got going well towards the end, and I think he should have a fair chance. I think he's a good horse, and Augustus Rodan obviously going to the Breeders' Cup is going to be massive as well for Coolmore in a way, I suppose. Like he was saying, Paddington maybe slightly damaged his prospects as a stallion in maybe on Saturday in particular, but Augustus Rodan will probably be the big one for them now. If he can go over and win in the Breeders' Cup, he will be, I'd imagine, a very exciting sire next year. I couldn't see them going forward with him again next season. I mean, Paddington as well. I can't see him winning again, to be honest. I'd say he probably did enough for me anyway early in the season to prove that he will be a good sire. If he got beat once more, it could really, really damage him, I think. So I'd be surprised if they did.
Yeah, I don't think Vinny, an Irish trainer, has won the Japan Cup either. Michael Stout won it with Singspiel and Pilotsky, just looking earlier in the end of the last century. But with a horse like him, I tend to agree with him in there. I actually think he ran very well in the Arc, and he might be a horse because he's not necessarily like given the ledger and all that, he's probably not the most valuable stallion prospect per se. So he might be one of them horses that they actually use for sort of maybe 2 or 3 years more as a globetrotter and run him in all the good middle distance races and see how he takes to racing, and then retire him down the line. But he might actually be a horse for the lads, so to speak, to have some fun with actually racing over the next few years.
I'd say they've more than enough fun already somehow with the amount of horses they have and the amount of winners they have around the globe. One other thing that caught my eye during the week is their Punchestown. They've announced some significant changes to next year's festival. No reserved enclosure is one of them. They've also reduced the ticket prices on the first 3 days, the Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday, to 30 quid. And it's 40 quid on the Friday and Saturday. And they're also earlier start times for the first few days as well, at 2:30 instead of 3:40. What do you make of this, Em? Are these good moves?
Yeah, I was a little bit surprised by the change to the start time, to be honest. I always kind of liked the evening, but obviously they've done a bit of a survey with their normal customers, and it's come out a vast majority kind of want it earlier in the day, which, look, I think it's great that they're kind of getting feedback from the race scores and trying to improve it the whole time. Dropping the price is great, I think, because I think that's probably the biggest barrier to people going racing. You know, the cheaper it is, I think the more people that are going to go. And I think there was one kind of enclosure that was you to get an extra ticket for or something, and I that's something that I absolutely have no time for. I think that's probably one of the best things about racing in Ireland, is that 99% of the tracks don't really have section kind of areas like you see in like Ascot now. Yesterday, you know, there was certain places that only some people could go into and stuff like that. I think that's probably the best thing about racing in Ireland. You can kind of go anywhere in the track within reason. Obviously, you can't go into the boxes or anything like that, but you can kind of go all around the track and see kind of everything. So yeah, I think it's good. Punchestown are kind of planning for the future, I suppose. They're not sitting on their laurels. I think they got good crowds last year, but they're kind of trying to improve, I think, which is always a good thing.
Yeah, it's nice that they're engaging with their audience. That's a really good, positive thing as far as I'm concerned, because I think an awful lot of racecourses, with the money they get from the TV rights, they tend to not be too interested in the actual paying public, because they're surplus to requirements on many occasions. But it's good to see Punchestown. I suppose, look, you can't have a Punchestown festival or a Galway festival or those sort of ones without a massive crowd. It's what makes the whole thing work. And it's good to see that they're nodding the cap to those people and taking them into account what they're looking for. As you say, the only thing for me that with the change of start times, I think the 2:30 on the first day particularly might be a little bit detrimental to some people, particularly a lot of UK people travel over for Punchestown. So you'd imagine if you are flying over, 3:40 is a better start time than 2:30 for you, and the same for people travelling from, you know, far and wide within Ireland as well. It takes a bit of time to get there, and you know, if you're booking into a Airbnb, a hotel or something, you know, a lot of them have a particular time you can check in at, and you want to leave your bags and all those sort of things. So I think 3:40 would have been a better thing for the opening day, particularly. Johnny, what about that? We're looking at the prices in to racing here. So it was up to 50 quid to get into that reserved enclosure when they had it. Now it's going to be, you can get in for 30 on the first 3 days, 40 on the last 2 days. It seems to be good value, does it, for top class racing, for a top class sporting event generally?
Yeah, I wouldn't have a major issue with the prices at the race meetings, to be honest. I've been saying this over the last few weeks. I'm extremely worried with the direction that the race program itself is going, Vinny, because, you know, we're expanding the race fixtures list at a time when we've had, like, over the past 6 weeks, we've had a lot of double meetings, including during the week. Last week, 2 Goran flat cards, albeit one of them was a refixture, followed by a Navan flat card. These are 3 meetings at this in an Irish week where basically there's no one there. And like, the more and more I go racing now, I know Punchestown is kind of still stands out as a bit of an outlier because it is a festival. But the more and more I go racing, the more and more it feels like an industry cards every other day, basically. And even the likes of Limerick yesterday. I don't know where the atmosphere is going from a lot of race meetings, and people are basically staying at home because it's easier to watch on your phone or on TV. And I really think race courses have to put their heads together and start getting people back racing and creating an atmosphere, because I spoke about this as well at the time. Like, when I was in Mallow maybe 3 weeks ago, and there was a listed race on in Mallow, and I'd say if there were 8 trainers represented on the day, one of them was in the parade ring before the race. So if trainers aren't, and fair enough, the sales were on, but if trainers aren't bothering to show up for listed races, what's the incentive for owners to get involved? If your trainer isn't there and there's basically no crack at the racetrack. So I'm very, very worried about where racing is going in terms of people actually showing up. 35-minute gaps are a disaster as well for drawing out the day. And in fairness to Punchestown, at least they're constantly trying to look after people who want to come to the festival, but day to day, I'm really, really worried about like why anyone would go racing at the moment. I think it's becoming really, really soulless.
Yeah, and it's all to do with, realistically, online gambling, is it? Or betting office gambling, I suppose, to some extent too. But that's what it's all based around, isn't it? All these fixtures and everything else. We can talk about horse racing in Ireland to tell you, oh, we have to put on extra fixtures because there's a demand for them from the trainers and everything else, and they need to get their horses a run. But ultimately, the overall fixture list, you could, I suppose, in theory, pare it down to about 40 meetings a year in Ireland if you'd all just the big festivals is all that people really go to from an audience point of view for bums on seats, whereas it's really about the TV money, isn't it? They getting their 50, 60,000 a day for that. What do you think, Emma? Is there any solution to this, or is it going to get worse as we go forward?
Yeah, it's kind of a good point, I suppose. I was actually interesting. Like if you go racing any day and maybe a Thurles on a Thursday or something, like the demographic of the crowd is quite old, and whether that's going to change now, will they get kind of younger people going to those kind of meetings? It's kind of hard to see that happening, really. Like you were saying, it's kind of the big meetings that seem to attract everyone, and whether they what the solution is now, it's probably above my pay grade, really, to be honest with you. But yeah, it's a good point that's raised. I think the fixture list is kind of expanding the whole time, but I think it's probably not as big a problem here as. But I suppose get it under control before it gets to the way it is over in the UK, where it's been totally saturated completely. But yeah, it's probably a worry going forward. But you'd like to see kind of tracks being proactive, like Punchestown have been.
Yeah, well, you see that you talk about midweek Thurles and Clonmels and lots of other tracks as well. Like, who can really go to them? You've got to be someone who's either out of work or retired from work or have your own business or something where you can leave it to other people on the day. But like, an ordinary person isn't going to plan to go to Thurles on a Thursday, are they? Whereas they will, I know locally here where I am on the Curragh, people will plan in advance. Oh, Punchestown is coming up. I'm going to take a day off work or an afternoon off work to go to one of the days or whatever that may be. But people aren't going to do that for the run-of-the-mill meetings. So they're going to get less and less, as you say. The older demographic that's going... I don't know. Are there people younger than me who are as into horse racing as I am? Because you go to the likes of Thurles and you do find that the majority of people that will be there are already retired. For those midweek meetings, not for picking Thurles out as a case in point, but it's most of those meetings, isn't it? During the winter months, particularly, who else is going to go in bad weather and everything else? Younger people, I think they have their smartphones, they have their connections to all the different services, so they can watch it on their TV, watch it on their phone. What do you think, Johnny? There's no real future for those midweek meetings to draw a crowd anyway, so that's never going to happen, is it?
The midweek stuff is less of a concern, like, and Thurles will still have its kind of its loyal enough following, albeit they're dying off. Like, and this is actually thing. Like, I was looking at as the horses came in yesterday to get, you know, whatever is a modest round of applause, even on Munster National Day. I'm looking at the smattering of people around, and the average age must be at least 65. Like, of the people who actually still do what you used to do, you'd go around and you'd clap the horse in. When I went racing initially, there was actually a bit of an atmosphere in the stands, like, and you go racing now, it's very, very quiet, and it's like well, you're completely right. These races are being run for people basically gambling online and all of that. But like, we're going down a very slippery slope here. Like, they might as well just have one race course in and just run it for TV with nobody there. Like, American race courses now are run for the racinos or whatever. Like, if the individual racetracks can't attract people to go racing, the longer term, the future of the sport is really worrying, because part of the whole thing, why I got into racing, like, I had the leg of a horse that ran in the big race yesterday, and the crack you would have going to the races and the crowds in the parade ring and meeting other people and talking about your horse. If you go racing now and, say in Navan last week, where there was like a 25 runner flat handicap with a prize money of less than $6,000. If you're lucky enough to be 24 horses in that race, your $6,000 becomes roughly 3 after, all your money is given away to the trainer, to the jockey, the expenses for going racing. Then you pay your training fees, and you're the lucky one who's actually had the winner, and you're at the races that day itself, the trainer might be there, and there's literally no one there. So it's no crack really at all having a winner, apart from the fact that people are going to text you to say they watched it on TV. So I'm like, what is the buzz of this? Like, the League of Ireland out of COVID has absolutely grown exponentially in terms of crowds. Racing has come out of COVID where, to me, it feels like every day I'm going racing now, and Justin O'Hanlon spoke about this with me on the telly during the week. It's complete overkill at the moment. Far too many fixtures and no crack at all going racing. And you see the same faces, say, for those who are passing away, and that is the elder generation who have been keeping the thing afloat by going racing. I'm very worried about it anyway.
Yeah, but again, there are more horses in training. There are more owners. We're told the sales are flying. All that sort of stuff is booming, but the actual race score isn't going. So it's a different type of industry maybe than it was 15, 20 years ago, because there seems to be an awful lot of horses in training. Lots of people are involved in syndicates now, which have become a big boom thing in the last maybe 8-10 years. I suppose COVID has thrown a lot of people into owning horses, people who, sat at home for a couple of years, couldn't leave their house, and then all of a sudden they're thinking, God, I'd love to own a horse. I've always wanted to do it. I'll do it now. And there's an awful lot of people have got into it, but it's how do you make that whole connection back, isn't it, to get them racing? But as I say, it's very difficult to do on a wet and windy Tuesday in some minor meeting somewhere where there's nobody there. That's the issue, isn't it? Anyway, looking back, Johnny, at the weekend, the Munster National, Ricky Doyle, he won a Kerry National. He's after winning a Munster National. He won an Irish National. I say they'll all be looking for him come Aintree, won't they? He seems to be the go-to guy at the minute for these big races. What did you make of that?
Yeah, fair play to Ricky. Like, he's gone in. He goes into Gordon's. I think he goes in maybe once or twice a week, and goes in and rides out, and like ends up getting on Gevray, a 6-1 chance in the Munster National, despite the fact he's never actually ridden a winner for Gordon. So fair play to him. And Gevray, of course, there was all the controversy about him at Listowel, in which Gordon wanted a jockey change, and Brian Hayes, quite legitimately, in my view, said, like, I'm booked to ride here. I've come all the way to Listowel, and it was kind of a case of, I suppose, right horse, wrong day, because he was good on the day. I found the whole race a bit odd, because I fancied Jack Kennedy's mount Frontal Assault on the basis that Jack Kennedy was riding him and Gordon had 2/3 of the field, and the market was really uneasy about him, and he stopped to absolutely nothing coming into straight. Maybe he's having jumped well. Like, he actually looked like for much of the race this is going to go well for him. But the race itself, I mean, I have to say, I thought Darragh O'Keefe was brilliant on Largy Debut, who's a horse that we call plenty of names, but actually probably has one of these in him, like maybe a Paddy Power or something like that. Darragh felt after the race that he wanted better ground, but I'm attaching absolutely no blame to Gordon whatsoever here, because if I were him, I would have done exactly the same thing, run as many horses as you can. But for the Munster National to have this situation where you have like 3 other trainers in the race, for me, was really, really disappointing. And maybe, I was talking to your colleague Tom Weeks yesterday about it, Vincent, he was saying maybe it's like, it's kind of late summer horses running this race. It's not so much for winter horses, and it was run on proper winter ground, and maybe you're kind of in a rock and a hard place situation in terms of, like, Willie Mullins didn't have a runner at all on the card yesterday. But the Munster National has to be more attractive than attracting 4 trainers to the race for me.
Yeah, but at least Gordon supported it, because if he didn't, it would have been a farce, wouldn't it? If he hadn't any of his down it. What did you make of it, Emma?
Yeah, I was kind of echo Johnny's thoughts there. It's not really very appealing as a kind of, I suppose, as a punting race doesn't make a whole pile of difference to you, but just kind of as a, I suppose, a fan of race, and you don't like really seeing, kind of maybe one trainer having so many runners, and it's not, it's no fault of Gordon's, obviously. It's always been a kind of a funny race, the Munster National. It kind of falls at a funny time for me. You nearly forget that it's on. Like it's before kind of all, like, the Cork National now is in a week or two's time, and I suppose those kind of big staying chases are only really kind of getting going, and the kind of ground you get in Limerick isn't going to kind of suit the summer horses who are finishing up the season. So it's always been a race that, I don't know, it's always been a bit of a strange one for me. But yeah, it was massive for Ricky Doyle, I suppose. I think he was thanking Gordon afterwards, because Gordon got him into the Kerry National by taking out a couple of his horses, and he won that for Martin Brazil, and now he's come and won on Gevray for Gordon. Yeah, I mean, Ricky's been riding a long time, and he has great luck in these national races. And like you were saying, he could be in demand for Aintree. But yeah, he's a good rider, and it's nice to see him getting his day for Gordon. I think, like Johnny said, I think he's been riding out for him for a while, so it's been a good partnership. Yeah.
It's nice to see what our so-called journeyman jockeys able to win these big pots, and he's done it consistently, which is great. Another one I happened to see there this morning, I was looking at the National Hunt Jockeys table at this stage of the season. I know it's very early in the season, but Keith Donoghue is joint top with Jack Kennedy, which is some turnaround for a guy who nearly gave up the sport a few years ago because he couldn't do the weights. Amazing to think that he's up there, and hopefully he'll continue to have a very good season too. Anyway, let's wrap it up by looking at last week. Have you got a horse for me to follow from last week? Because I was away, so I didn't see much of this. So must be something you have in mind, Johnny, have you?
I'm going to give answer to Kay Finney. He won the 2 mile maiden hurdle yesterday. I actually thought Limerick was. I thought there was some really nice performances in the maidens. Obviously, Calixios in the beginner's chase. She's a fine wine debuting for Henry in the first, smashing pedigree, and her dam was a kind of a free going but serial winner for William Mullins, and she's a fine wine in the prating afterwards. You can see she's quite strong herself, but Rachel got her to settle very good. But I'm going to give answer to Kay, who this was probably the result that gave me the most kind of kick out of the day, because I just think Terence O'Brien's a lovely fella to deal with. He wouldn't have that many I suppose notable horses, but he's had a good summer of it. John Chinnick has come in. He said he didn't even know the fella, but he was sort of recommended to him, and he's really embraced John Chinnick's £7 claim. Says he's great hands. But this answer to Cave, who was admittedly a 7-year-old, and funnily enough, the maiden hurdle at Limerick yesterday, in what are we, 22nd of October, 7-year-old finished first, 6-year-old finished second, 7-year-old finished third, and the 7-year-old that finished third, Diane Boy Dakar, is a beautiful looking horse for the Doyles, who ran very well. But there were some fairly well touted horses in the race, including What's Up Darling, who travelled very well and finished second. An answer to Cave left them all for dead. And Terence was even saying after the race that he thought his work actually wasn't quite what it was going into the race, and he wasn't really sure what to expect. Sent off 25-1, and he's a horse with a really nice pedigree. Cave Tara, half brother to You Wear It Well, obviously, who was the Cheltenham winner last season, and I thought for a horse that as much as he's 7 going on 8, I'm not actually sure that really matters, because he's hardly raced. He said he's hardly actually been even in training, and considering how sort of the race went on, the better he got, I think going down the line as a chaser, he's going to be a really nice prospect. And I'm delighted that someone like Terence O'Brien has a horse to actually target these graded races, that isn't one of the big yards. I actually think this horse could have a lot of ability. Very
good. And Emma, have you got one?
Yeah, I'm going to give the winner of the bumper on Thursday in Thurles. I thought he was very impressive. The Busy Fool for Philip Rothwell, and Fidelma Elvin rode him. I was just very impressed by the way he went in Winnie's race. He looked like a big kind of green horse who probably improved an awful lot from it. I don't think they were probably expecting him to go on and run as well as he ended up doing. He beat a horse of Gordon's who was quite fancied for Gainestown. But just turning into the straight, kind of he had plenty to do, but he just absolutely took off when she started pushing him, and just looks kind of like a big kind of raw horse. He's by Doyen, I think he's a 5-year-old, and I just don't think I think they said he was shown a bit at home, but he should improve an awful lot from him, just looking at him coming back into the ring and stuff. So yeah, I think he'll probably be one to follow going forward. Whether they'll stay in bumpers for the year or kind of straight over hurdles, I'm not sure, but I think he should win plenty of races.
Yeah, Philip Rothwell's having a good year, isn't he? He's had quite a few winners. Anyway, that's it for now. Make sure to subscribe to our channel if you haven't done so already, and do gamble responsibly, and we shall see you all again next Monday for more of the same. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.